Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Good evening. Tomorrow my wife and I will celebrate our 32nd wedding anniversary.
Ew.
I want to thank her and all my family for standing with me through this long and arduous campaign. And of course I want to thank all of you who have stood with me in this very important battle for the future of our country. We are indeed in a struggle to preserve our republic, our civilization, and our religion, and to set free a suffering humanity.
What?
And the battle rages on. In this race, we have not received the final count to include military and provisional ballots. This has been a very close race, and we are awaiting certification by the Secretary of State. This particular race was watched not only by the people of this state, but by the entire nation and many around the world.
Yeah, like Russia.
Why? Because I believe the heart and soul of our country is at stake. Like most Americans, I'm concerned about the future of our country.
Me too.
Both financially and morally. After the election of Donald Trump a little over a year ago, I saw a window of hope and an opportunity that we could return to our founding principles and the Constitution of the United States. And the battle rages on. Together we must stand against those who would take from us our country. In the words of the Holy Scriptures, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
What?
Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God,
What?
that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. The sacrifices of brave men and women throughout our history cry out to us, the living, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work, for which many of them gave the ultimate sacrifice. Let us here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Thank you. Merry Christmas, and may God bless you.
Is he asking for a recount or fire and brimstone? He won't concede, so that makes it just a little bit sweeter for me. He's kicking and screaming into that, evil night, to the darkness that he's fighting against. I mean, this is a man who's been accused of, well, he obviously has racist views. His wife says that, they do care for Jews because one of their attorneys is a Jew. The racial animosity and the hatred that he spewed, where he said he only likes the first 10 amendments and that everything after that, which provides for equal protection and abolished slavery and all, gave women the right to vote. They all got to go. I mean, this man is an abomination, in these United States in this 21st century. And, the only thing I could think that he could probably do successfully is host a morning show with Omarosa called Good Morning Fantasyland. And he won't give up. He won't concede. And you know what? If you have seen what happened in that election, if you've seen the exit polls, the breakouts, the post reports, you need to thank a black woman today. Black women in this country have always been and continue to be a force of nature. They are the most religious people I have ever known. They are the most churched group of any group, white evangelicals. You got nothing on a black girl. You got nothing on a black woman. Nothing at all. It is just so amazing. And they voted for all women. Thank you, thank you, thank you. They voted for all families. They voted for justice. They voted for freedom. They voted for the last 16 amendments to the Constitution. Thank you. Thank you for that. 2/3 of white women in Alabama voted for Roy Moore, even though a majority of them believed that these women were molested. Go figure. 2/3 of them. voted for Roy Moore, even though exit polling showed that a majority of them believed the allegations of sexual misconduct were, quote, definitely or probably true. I told you that. That was the first exit poll we got. 55% of people who voted for Roy Moore believed that it was probably true, and they just didn't care. They said they were still voting for him anyway. But 98% of black women voted for Doug Jones. 98%. And I think it might have something to do with the fact that he said that the last time America was great was when we had slavery and slave times. Families were very, strong. And his, wanting to get rid of this last 16 amendments, which include the 13th and 14th, with abolish slavery and promised equal protection under law. But, white women in Alabama who voted for Roy Moore said they did so because they identified with his evangelical and anti-abortion stances, as if black women aren't, churched, as if black women don't care about these issues. Here's the numbers on black women being churched, okay? 74% of all black women in this country have answered in the affirmative that, quote, living a religious life is very important. They are the most religious demographic in this country. And the idea that African Americans, especially black women, aren't evangelicals, aren't going to church, aren't involved in their community churches, aren't involved in their daily lives with religion is crazy. It's just so ignorant. It's so stupid. But, 57% of white women say that living a religious life is very important. Compare that to 74% of African American women who say living a religious life is very important. So, the uncomfortable truth here is that some women in this country, white ones, like white supremacy. And that's what they voted for. And again, we're back down to the common denominator, the lowest one. If you are sufficiently racist, it doesn't matter if you rape children. It doesn't matter if you molest women. It doesn't matter if you are, taking 16-year-olds out back behind a dumpster and head pushing their head into your crotch with a locked car door. No, it doesn't matter. Black women voted with the interests of all women in mind, and you need to thank a black woman today. Thank you. Thank you, black women. Thank you. I mean, this is unbelievable. Blake Farenthold, he's another one. This just in, the head of the House Ethics Office. The House Office of Congressional Ethics. Did he resign, or is he's just been accused of sexually assaulting women? Isn't that something? Surprise. Yeah. So you got candidates that aren't running in 2018; they're running in 1918. Okay, and this has got to end. And it looks like it might be ending. I'm looking around the country. The next big election that we're going to have, it'll be a very difficult special election, but we have one in March for Charlie Dent's seat. Charlie Dent represents Western Pennsylvania, which is why, Trump yesterday selling his tax plan was, choosing people from Pennsylvania. But Charlie Dent is resigning. And he has already said, he's not going to seek re-election next year. And he is looking at a job. He says he's been talking to TV executives about becoming an analyst. Yeah, and so he may even leave his seat early, but it looks like there's going to be a very, very difficult fight in Western Pennsylvania, but we might be able to win that thing. And then for the Republicans in general that are competing in the midterm, the very first midterm of President 32% Trump, looks like it's going to be difficult for them. I think that, this might actually work out for us. And if it does work out for us, we can undo this ridiculous FCC ruling on net neutrality. If a tax cut is passed, we can actually undo it. Of course, they'll saddle us with we're raising taxes. Yeah. But everything that's being done now can be undone with a Democratic majority. Of course, he could veto it, and it just depends on how many seats we can take in the House. But I think it's completely doable. I really do. I think we can take the House. You've got Jeff Flake retiring from the Senate, and they're running Bannon's pick as Kelly Ward. She's a nutbag, okay? And this is Bannon is promoting Kelly Ward. She's another nut job, and so she's a far right winger. And she's running for Jeff Flake's seat. Nevada, you got Danny Tarkanian. He's a Trump cheerleader. He's going to challenge in a primary Dean Heller, who really needs to vote no on this tax bill. Yep. You've got John McCain with his, a very aggressive form of brain cancer, probably not able to run again. He did make it clear that he would leave the Senate if he was unable to perform his duties. Arizona's governor might fill the seat by appointing a representative named Martha McSally, but that could deprive the Republicans of their most formidable candidate against Kelly Ward, and so that could throw that election into. And then you've got in Mississippi. This is why you need to thank an African-American woman, because in Mississippi you got this hardline state senator named Chris McDaniel, who's going to run in a primary against Roger Wicker. So you got a lot of upheaval going on because of Bannon. Bannon is still running these kooky candidates, and you know what? We could actually take these seats. I told you we could take Alabama. People thought I was insane, but the second I saw Roy Moore, and Roy Moore hadn't had any of these sexual allegations brought against him at the time that I saw Roy Moore win the primary against Luther Strange, and I knew we had a Democratic candidate named Doug Jones who was a law and order candidate, meaning he was a prosecutor who prosecuted terrorism, who earned the respect and the love of the African American community, had actually done the shoe leather work that it takes to prosecute a cold case of two men that were part of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing back in the 60s and never gave up on it. And I knew Alabama could turn out the vote for a Doug Jones, and I was sitting on the air telling the Democrats they need to get serious about this and put up challengers in ruby red states. And we did, and he was already in the race. Democrats didn't have much to do with it, but he won. And the same thing could happen in Mississippi when they divide the party, and the same thing could happen in Iowa when they divide the party, and the same thing could happen in Arizona, and the same thing can happen in Nevada. We can literally take these seats. And can we win the House? I think we can. Tennessee, Corker's retiring. Don't forget, they're going to primary John Barrasso in Wyoming. You got Orrin Hatch is going to be challenged. We can win. We can literally win. Florida, Rick Scott's going to challenge Bill Nelson, who is not my favorite person. Bill Nelson and I will never be friends. I despise him, but he votes the right way. And I can't give up his seat to a Skeletor who, says you could shoot somebody in the back and run away and you're innocent if you felt fear. A guy who was responsible as the CEO of a healthcare company for one of the largest Medicare frauds in the history of the United States to take that Senate seat away. Oh, my God. And all we need in the House is 24 seats to take the majority. That's all we need, 24 seats. And the temperature in this country, the leaning Democrat numbers in very Republican places are amazing. 60% of Iowa leaning Democratic. 60% of Iowa. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.